Modern Pleasure answers the questions about sex that you've always wanted to ask but didn't.
Join me, Kim K, and our resident sexpert, Dr. Jenny Schuyler, as we dive deep into combos ranging from sexual intimacy and pleasure to eye-opening sexual revelations. Well, we're back, and this is going to be an interesting conversation. I have no idea how this is going to go. It's going to be interesting, and I'm sure Dr. Jenny is ready for this, right?
Sure. It's fun.
Okay, and you look ready. I mean, I love what you got going on here. Love the outfit.
Thank you.
So, defining kinky sex, beginner, intermediate, advanced ways to play. And speaking of play, Adam and Eve has an incredible offer to share with anyone who's listening to our Modern Pleasure podcast. Go to adamandeve.com, use code word modern, and get 50% off almost any one item at checkout. And you also get 10 free gifts and free shipping on your entire order. And no worries if you have nosy neighbors or want to keep your adult toys a secret. Packaging is discreet. Nobody's going to know. Did you know that Adam and Eve is the leading sex toy company in the US over 50 years? And I just found out that they have over 20 million customers. That's freaking huge. I had no idea that they were that big. They're incredible. Check them out. adamandeve.com. Use code MODERN to get 50% off almost any one item. And you may want to explore that after this episode. For sure. We're going to have Savannah on in just a little bit to go over some fun products that she picked out that she thought would be good for this episode. But to be quite honest, I am not a kinky person. I've never been into the kinky thing. I don't know why. I'm at a loss for words here. So I'm just going to let you roll with it because I don't even know how to begin.
Sure. Let's define it. Right.
Let's do that.
So maybe, Kim, you say you're not a kinky person. You might not realize that you have an inner kink, or you might have a part of you that is kinky, right? Maybe how you go ahead.
I knew you were going to say that. I just knew you were going to say that. You were going to say, you know what? I bet you are. I bet you have a little kinkiness in there somewhere. You don't even know it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's if you think about kinky really globally, it's just not mainstream, right? It's that playfulness that's outside the vanilla box or outside the traditional box of, in terms of our sexuality, certainly the alternative sexualities, and kinky really more specifically refers to the BDSM world. So bondage, discipline, sadomasochism.
I had a friend who used to do that. There was a club that she used to go to, and she would tell me stories, and I would just be like, yeah. And I mean, honestly, I'm going to admit it. I had no idea.
And there's no judgment on it, right? I think it's really easy for vanilla people to kind of be in shock and have sort of that jaw-dropping experience that leaves the kinky community feeling pushed out or ostracized. So I just want to sort of invite in the permission again of, everybody's sexuality is welcome. And if your sexuality is more kinky or unconventional or alternative, that's totally welcome.
And I just want to add, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it. I was just feeling super naive about what I didn't know existed. I mean, I got the whole S&M and the bondage thing and the, couple sharing and stuff like that. I mean, I get that. I know that. But I mean, some of the things that she was telling me about, I was just like, I didn't even know that was a thing. And so that's where the surprise is. So I am very curious about what kinky, the definition of kinky that we're going to get into. But yeah, no, I want to make sure that I preface too. I'm not by any means making any judgment calls or anything. I'm more or less calling out my naivety when it comes to this. And sometimes that's a little difficult to admit because I'm thinking, geez, at my age, you should be a little bit more versed in this, but maybe not. I don't know.
Oh, I mean, if you're not, that's fine too. I mean, vanilla is mainstream because most people live in the mainstream, right? And if that works for them and that's where their locus of pleasure is, then there might not be a lot of opportunities or even time to consider outside that box.
Right, right.
Um, I think for the sake of this episode, let's keep it to BDSM in terms of,
Okay.
because we'll have another episode on unconventional turn-ons that can be more broadly, all the other things that are outside that vanilla box to include outside the vanilla box of relationships. So in this case, BDSM, right? Bondage, discipline, sadomasochism, um, really allows couples or lovers to play with all those elements. So, bondage elements is where we tie up. We are either tied up or we tie someone up. Domination, the D for domination is sort of playing, and the S, so there's you can kind of take this acronym and tease it apart. So you could do bondage, discipline, sadomasochism, or you can take out the DS and do domination, submission. And domination, submission play is really having more of that person who's in a very dominant role and person who's in a very submissive role. And you can extrapolate and have more identities or labels to that, right? So you can have master slave or mistress slave, right? You can have just doctor patient. You can role play through the different names. A lot of dungeons or a lot of dominatrix people will have a slave, right? And it doesn't mean slavery like we know it historically. It is more the person who serves them in a submissive role for a period of time. It's a contracted period of time. And they can do that within the dominatrix dungeon or even outside it, right? It's the contract between the two people that make it that DS dynamic. Oftentimes, there's a piece of verbal humiliation or physical humiliation that is involved in that.
So when you say, so I want to go back a little bit.
Sure.
So when you're talking about the dominatrix and the slave and all that, so and you said a contract for a period of time. So this is definitely like a role playing game, but
So let's get to SM, right? Sadomasochism again is not really. It's not. The whole thing is role play. When you are in this contract of play, right? You contract to play in a certain way, either dominant submissive dynamics or with sadomasochism dynamics, and you sign up knowing that it is all role play and it is all a mix of playing with the edge of pain in a way that is pleasurable. So let me say that again. It is not inducing pain that is unwanted. It is playing with the edge of pain or even things that have a sensory or an emotional experience of pain, but it is through the experience of pain that we feel the pleasure, which is why it's not for everyone. A lot of people don't mix those pain and pleasure pathways.
mm-hmm.
Right? So you could talk about the neurobiology or the psychology of those cross wires, and we could do that if you want to. But the idea is it is role play. It is pleasurable for both people engaged in this play. It is a contract of play, and after the play is over, um, there is what we call aftercare of it's the come down. It's the container where we take care of. So it's usually the person who is submissive or the person who was tied up gets to be nurtured and tended to. And
Mm.
if you really extrapolate aftercare, it's good for the whole couple, the whole system to process the experience. What went well, what didn't go well, what were the challenges, was the safe word executed at any point because we crossed a boundary? Was it needed or were we on the edge of it? So what I mean by a safe word is because we are playing with this idea of pain, emotionally and or physically, couples need to contract in a safe word, right? Because the whole thing is a consensual play zone. And the idea is we don't go beyond somebody's consent. And the way to protect that boundary is a safe word. And the safe word is never usually no or stop because that could be part of the fun of the play. It's like, no, no, no,
Right.
stop, stop, right? So you want a different word like banana or I don't know, yellow.
It's always a fruit. It's always a fruit.
It's not always a fruit. It could be lavender. People come up with whatever name they need, right? But if you know, if a play partnership, and it's not always a couple, right? Sometimes play partners are not lovers. But if the play partnership, if the two people playing do have to end up using the safe word, that's an important conversation to have in aftercare and afterwards, right?
That's interesting because I guess when I think of S&M, I've always thought of it as being a very painful experience just because of what I've heard and that there was pain involved, that there was whips and maybe, some tough bondage, handcuffs or something along those lines. I will admit I have experimented with bondage before, but it was not painful. We didn't do the whole,
Yeah.
slave role. It was just more, I think there was whipped cream involved maybe. It was still very vanilla,
Yeah.
but,
Light. Kim, it was light kink, right? I like to
like
qualify categories. Think about kink on a spectrum or BDSM on a spectrum from very mild or light to very heavy play, right? And where you land in that, right? That's what the safe word is about and the contract, right? This is why it's consensual play. Say, we use this sort of acronym of safe, sane, consensual play because um, we need to have a boundary based on the person, both people's boundaries and limits. So, if
Mhm.
one person wants to play medium and the other person wants to play light, the boundary in the safe word allows us not to go past the light person's zone into too much medium play.
I have a question. Do you find that there are couples that maybe the female would be in a sense of obligation to take part in this kind of stuff and what kind of effect might that have on someone? And I'm only saying this because the friend that I'm talking about, she didn't really like doing it, but he did. And she just wanted to make him happy, so she went along with it, and, to be quite honest, over months period of time, it really affected her mentally, and the relationship ended up dissolving, but I remember, feeling like, "Well, then why are you doing it?" And I just wonder if there are a lot of times in these instances where this kind of role playing or, S&M could be harmful on a mental level.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe that's a great question for Savannah. It sounds like she has a personal experience with that. And I've definitely had couples where we're trying to negotiate the sexual styles that are very different that way. And
Mm, mhm.
I'll say that, yeah, it can be a deal breaker for couples. There's workarounds. I'll talk about a workaround in a moment, but I think it's really important that both people are on the same page wanting to play because otherwise, it can be borderline to full abuse, right? You have to be safe, sane, consensual play. So the
Right.
consent first is, do I consent to myself, right? It's the internal check. Do I want this? Am I, and it's same for any kind of sex, to be honest. It doesn't have to be just BDSM or kinky sex. Do I want this? Checking in with your internal landscape that the consent first comes from inside. So then that your yes is not obligatory or autopilot. I think that's a huge piece of it.
Mhm.
And yeah, if you're playing in a dynamic that doesn't work for you, certainly if you are in a submissive dynamic that you don't want to be in, that can be really tricky, and can be very non-consensual.
Yeah, and I think I've always kinda wrapped my head around her experience because this was years ago, and, I just remember thinking, That just doesn't sound like any fun at all for me." But I also wonder for anybody who wants to experiment with this type of play, and you've never done it before, I think it would require a fairly decent amount of time and a conversation about it with your partner to so how do you move from that vanilla, light kink to something a little bit more daring? I mean, uh, I for one would be very uncomfortable, I believe. I would be. I don't know that I would wanna do it, but part of me says, "Why not?"
Mm, mhm. Yeah, it's a great question. Why not?
I mean, I'm claustrophobic. I don't like to be tied up.
Yeah.
That right there causes anxiety.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But maybe I could be the one who is,
Tying up.
have George be the submissive one. He might like that. I don't know. Never tried.
Yeah, or you do it in a way you can experiment lightly. Like, I remember from last episode, Savannah described her cool experience with her boyfriend where she was blindfolded and tied up and gave him specific step-by-step directions of what she wanted in terms of touch and sensation to elevate her arousal and her orgasm. And it was very illuminating for them because she described it as, oh, she had to wake up and actually very specifically say everything, and the boyfriend now knows her body map really well. So, you could play
Yeah,
with
that
it
was
that way.
interesting.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. And Kim, I'll say this, I've got couples, so I don't think it's a deal breaker as long as it's not abusive. I've got couples where one person's really kinky and one person's really vanilla. And what we have done in couples therapy is this: we separate the nights of the month for one person's play versus another. So um can I just use your name for the sake of anonymity? I'm going to say
Yes, you
George.
can. I mean, you've already had me
Okay.
describing my husband's penis, so I really don't think that
Okay.
this is a stretch.
Oh, well, good. Okay. So let's say that you're the vanilla one, because it sounds like you are. And
I
let's
am.
hypothesize that George is really kinky and wants to be tied up and verbally humiliated, hypothetically, right?
Okay.
And you're like, ooh, that feels edgy to me. I've got some pieces around being tied up that kind of don't work for me. And none of this is a turn on for you. But for him, hypothetically, vanilla sex is not a turn on for him. So how do you negotiate this? So I have a lot of couples in this predicament. And what we do is we assign certain nights of the month to the Kim days. So those are vanilla days for Kim. And then there's kinky nights for George. So it's sort of like K nights and G nights. And as long as the marriage or the partnership is really solid and loving, it's an act of generosity, right? He gives you oral sex and does vanilla, things to help elicit arousal and orgasm for you as a gift, as a generous gift of love for you. Even though it doesn't really do much for him arousing wise, it does open his heart, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
on his nights, maybe you tie him up, maybe you do, verbal role play pieces, whatever he wants, right? And he can be very specific with what he wants because you'll be new to it, right? Until you're more seasoned. But usually the person who wants to play more kinkily will give you the exact directions of what they want. And then you can offer that to him again as a generous act from your heart, even though it doesn't arouse you. So you have this asynchronous sex, if you will, right? That works for couples who have stylistic differences this way.
I may need a how-to manual in order to make that happen, but I can see George coming to me after he hears this episode and going, "Yes, we need to do this." That's very interesting.
Mhm.
So when we're defining the different uh, levels of kinky, would you say that beginner kinky is more on the light side and maybe what you just described with me and George and kind of, moving into something a little bit more daring um and I actually we'll bring Savannah in here in a minute, but I do actually like Savannah's description of what they did. I think it was a book or something that had different little
Mm.
this is what you're gonna do this time or something like that. We'll have her explain that a little bit better. But, so I'm assuming that that would be kind of on that beginner level. Now, let's just pass intermediate for now. We'll get back to it. What is the advanced level of this when we're talking about, the what did you call it?
BDSM,
BD. So that's bondage,
discipline, sadomasochism,
discipline,
or
sadomasochism.
yes is domination, submission.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So let's go to the completely other spectrum. I mean,
Heavy
what does that look like?
heavy play is just a heavier experience of this dynamic. It's still role play. It's still safe, sane, consensual. Um, I'm going to speak to something in a moment about that. But what it can be is it can be medical play, sometimes using medical instruments. It can be using wax or fire. It can be cock and ball torture. It can be heavy, heavy humiliation. It could be having a full-time slave. There's definitely some mistresses who have full-time slaves on call. It could be, having full tie up with heavy, heavy whipping with either whips or canes or whatnot. So there's scarring, sometimes even, eliciting blood. So it's
Wow.
really heavy, heavy play. That is usually on that heavy end of the spectrum.
And again, excuse my my naivety on this. Is that healthy? Is that a healthy way to have sex? I guess it's just an individual thing, right? I mean,
So that's it's a tricky question. It's a spectrum. I think that, you know, if you put anything in our humanity on a spectrum and you take it to the polar end, it is important to ask about its integrity and its health when you have it on the end, whether it's religion, whether it's philosophy, whether it's, sexuality. When you're at such a polarized end, it could be healthy, but you also, I think it's worth the inquiry of what's the driver behind it? Because such an extreme polarity of anything in our humanity, right? And that's just I think I think health lives in the moderation of the in between. I think
mm,
health lives in the moderation of nuance, right?
mhm,
So polarities, in my opinion, are rigid. And so I get curious about those. I'm not
mm.
necessarily trying to judge those or pathologize those, but I'm getting curious because in my curiosity, what I find is that sometimes, especially in the polarities of heavy play, in this case, there can be trauma reenactment.
Yeah. Yeah, and
And
that's
that's
been my experience with my friend, just, so I guess that's where the question for me lies is, how far do you go and how and at what point? But that was a really good answer because, when you consider it the moderation and the in between, that to me makes a lot more sense. But I guess, again, if you're in a situation, and I think we'll bring Savannah in here because she might be able to talk to this as well. But if you're in a situation where you feel forced or obligated, that's where probably the big problems would arise in that relationship.
it's also in the person who wants to play that heavily, right?
Mm.
The trauma reenactment, whether you are in the D or the S role,
Oh,
right?
you
I
can be the one that's giving it that has a lot
Yeah.
of the trauma.
So
Mm.
I'll give you an example. I had a male client once who really liked heavy, heavy humiliation play. And he was somewhat distressed about this. He's like, it just doesn't seem normal. And we were like, well, let's put aside the pathology of what's normal because that doesn't really serve you to judge yourself that way. But let's look at where this comes from, right? And there's a great book called The Erotic Mind by Jack Morin. He's passed, but it's a great book that sort of deconstructs where our eroticism comes from. And and we have and what he really says, the essence of the book is when we have painful childhood experiences, one of our defense mechanisms is to eroticize that which is painful rather than because children can't internalize too much pain. They can't handle it. They get flooded or they disassociate. There's no capacity. So
Mm.
what the human being does sort of unconsciously and intuitively is take that which is painful and make it erotic because now we're taking that which is painful and making it pleasurable. Since
Mm.
emerged, he was very humiliated by his father his entire life, and he really, eroticized that. So he really loved to be humiliated by his female partners. And what we did is really worked on the trauma of being humiliated as a child. And what happened is this erotic template did not go away because you can't do an eroticectomy and yank it out. And nor was it, but it softened. What it is it softened in his system, and it also made space and capacity for other kinds of sex. because he was pigeonholed and the only way to get aroused and orgasm is to be humiliated heavily. So what we did is we softened the trauma piece and opened his palate to a full, experience of sexuality. And the level of humiliation he needed to be aroused was also lower, right? He didn't have to be told he was the most worthless piece of crap on the planet anymore, right? And that was what happened for him. I'll just say that. And so sometimes people will come to me and go, this feels a little distressing, and they have a hunch that it's a trauma reenactment, and that's a good place to explore, because BDSM can also be trauma healing, right? There can be an empowerment in doing a scene that happened to you in adolescence or early child or anywhere in your life, and you now get to be the control and be the director of your scene, which can be really healing too.
I never thought about it in that way, but that makes sense. Yeah.
So depending on the nature of this, it can be in a reenactment or it can be really healing. Yeah.
It's therapy.
Yeah.
Adam and Eve is not giving you 10% off and not 20% off or even 40%. Your discount is even bigger. AdamandEve.com is giving you a whopping 50% off. But why stop there? Use offer code
MODERN.
And you'll also get 10 free gifts, like a sexy item for him, a special toy for her, and something you'll both enjoy, plus 6 free spicy movies and free shipping. So go to AdamandEve.com now for 50% off and more.
I'm going to bring Savannah in. Hi, Savannah.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
I just love your little, this obviously is your bedroom. I wanted to ask you before and forgot, what are the little neon lights back there?
That is a naked girl with her butt out.
Okay.
And this one is a pair of legs with panties coming off.
Oh, okay. My husband was watching our video the other day because I was I did a little snippet video that I put on social media. And he's like, what are those lights back there? I go, I have no idea. I meant to ask her that and I forgot because I couldn't tell. So Savannah, we've introduced Savannah before. She is our Modern Pleasure reviewer, and glad to have you back. And I know that you were in the green room listening to our conversation. Yeah. And I know we talked a little bit about this in the last episode that you were here. But I'd like to get your take on the conversation that we're having, and sounds to me like you've had some very similar experiences in terms of having this type of sex or role playing that did create a little bit of an issue for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I also have had experiences that were super healing, like Dr. Jenny was just talking about. When you have the right partner and you feel safe, those kinds of reenactments, you come out of it feeling a little bit like you've metabolized some of that trauma and like been able to release it out of your body. So I've also had that experience as well. But what you were talking about earlier, as far as, lack of consent or it being problematic, borderline abusive, or sometimes fully abusive, one of my past partners was very into, I don't know if we call it like age regression, age play, Dr. Jenny. I don't know like the exact terminology.
There is something called play. I mean, I don't know what kind of play you guys did. Did you have to act as a baby or child?
He wanted me to pretend that I was like 13 or 14. Like,
okay. Yeah.
It was not, yeah. I want to like try to respect his kinks and turn-ons at the same time as acknowledging like the negative impact it had on me. I think consent is so important in these kinds of dynamics.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in a relationship that has other issues. Like if you're not feeling like safe in your everyday relationship, adding on kink play, like especially heavy kink play with lack of aftercare is like, could be very damaging to your partner and your relationship long-term. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yes, you're really pointing out something important. The relationship between the two people, whether they're in a play relationship that they contracted, as friends, or whether they are long-term lovers, the relationship has to be safe and full of trust. If we don't have trust, we can't surrender. So you can't be a submissive and not, the whole point of being a submissive is to surrender, right? So if there's no trust globally, it's very difficult to role play then, right? Then
And you feel
that's a compromise there that was compromised. Yeah.
More forced into the role, pressured, like very much. My sexual relationship with him was like, I'm going to call it absolutely abusive. There was a lot of like shaming and coercive sex and sex that I didn't want to happen that would happen anyways. Things that he would do to me without my knowledge. Like we would be having sex just, every day, pretty easygoing, lovely little go in the bedroom. And then he would just like drop this on me. Like, I want you to pretend that you're like 13 and you are like, your breasts are not developed. And like, while he's actively inside of me, like that, like there was no like conversation of like, hey, do you want to play like this today? Like, is this okay with you? It was always just like never ending, always this thing. Like we wouldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
We would talk about it after and I'd be like, hey, yeah, like I didn't really like that. I'd like to just have some like normal, like connected sex with you. And just like intimacy. There's like not a lot of aftercare. And just to like have that pressure on me to like play in that way and then to just have it thrown on me like in the middle of sex.
Consent. There's no consent.
Absolutely no consent. Yeah. And then afterwards he'd be like, well, I only want to do things that you want to do. And it's like, okay, well, obviously you're not respecting what I have to say because you're still like pushing it so much onto me. And, there's like other very traumatic things that happened to me in that relationship that I'm working through continuously with my current partner. And so I don't ever want to give people the idea that like the kink community or like the BDSM community is like bad or like just like demonize it already and like ostracize that community more than they already are. Because like the other end of it is that it can be super, super safe. Like I did not let anybody tie me up since that last relationship until my current partner and like what I was talking to you guys about last episode and just like feeling safe to let go. And even past that, like we've engaged in more like intermediate kink kind of stuff. My current partner and I, using the pillow actually.
I love that pillow. That pillow.
Yeah, where I can just let go and kind of like be his little play doll and be okay with it. And it feels like good and healing. He holds me after and he tells me how much he loves me. But then at the same time, he can fuck me like I'm a doll. And it's like, I'm just like not, but like we have a conversation about it before. We have like continuous check-ins while we're actively having sex. We have a safe word, which is bunny, not a fruit, but cute.
I can see where that kind of, and I'm going to just call it abuse because it does sound very abusive, could really have an effect on somebody's mentality and how they look and view people and partnerships. So, I think you're right. You have to be extremely careful and mindful. And again, that consent is super important. Like you both have expressed.
It can be very degrading to your self-esteem over time. And like, I think it's the same way, like how people stay in those dynamics over time. Like I grew up like porn being like what you have to, interact as a woman. You have to be a certain way. You have to like this, you have to like that. You have to just take it in order to be like valuable as a sexual partner. And like, if that's what you think that you need to do to like have this person in your life or to get this person off or to like give them what they want to be good enough for them, over time, like you internalize that and it like makes your self-esteem erode.
Yeah, I could see that.
And then you also are completely turned off from your own pleasure.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is where there's a lot of good trauma therapies, somatic experiencing, for instance, hopefully soon legal MDMA assisted therapy. I just finished my training for psychedelic assisted therapy with that. It's super PTSD and sexual trauma. I mean, it's the key that unlocks our healing. It's just not legal yet. So yeah. I mean, there's still other ways, to do that healing. Yeah. either underground or, with a seasoned somatic person who really knows how to help you somatically work through that trauma.
Yeah,
And
actually, I have done a lot of, I don't know if this is legal to say, but I've done a lot of psychedelics, like guided psychedelic work and self-psychedelic work in like more medicinal and spiritual settings. And that has helped me work through more trauma than
yeah,
Oh,
I think,
interesting.
like at once, and just like really just like feel it.
yep.
The word I always want to use is metabolize, because it's like it's just sitting there and like it really, you just like get through it and you come out and you're just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Feel
Yeah.
lighter.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think, if you guys are ready, I'd like to get to the fun part of,
Yes, please.
this,
Can I
this
say one
episode.
more thing though that I think
Yeah,
is really key for
absolutely.
listeners on aftercare? I have just because we're on this idea of the possibility of trauma, a lot of people will play simply to be able to experience the aftercare.
Mm,
So I sometimes will ask my clients, like, are you also enjoying the play? And or are you really just is there developmental trauma of neglect and abandonment where the aftercare feels super nurturing and super rewarding and nourishing, right? And we can weave aftercare into every kind of sex. If you're super
yeah.
vanilla, you can still do aftercare, right? That could be foreplay. And so the nourishing, cuddling, holding, tending to can be before sex, during sex, after sex, no matter the type of sex. So I think that that's important for somebody to ask themselves, especially those who are attracted to this world, for maybe just the aftercare, because I've seen that.
Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk to us.
Let's let's talk toys. Before we get into Savannah's reviews of some of her fun kinky stuff, Adam and Eve has a very large variety of stuff to choose from beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And Savannah, I think you're going to show us a little bit of all three of those, um, uh, categories.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't sure what word to use, but the Adam and Eve does have something for everyone. Visit adamandeve.com. Choose almost any one item to get 50% off when you use the code MODERN. That's MODERN. Also includes 10 free gifts and free discreet shipping. I was on there the other day thinking it would be fun to kind of dress up sexy for Halloween this year. Not necessarily kinky, but maybe while giving out candy to George, not to the kids.
Oh
And they had some really cute, sexy costumes that I thought would be fun too. I haven't done that in a while, so
Me
maybe.
too.
Again, adamandeve.com, code word modern, get 50% off almost any one item, and don't forget the free stuff, 10 bonus gifts and free shipping. Just use code modern at checkout. So let's dive a little deeper into some of this fun stuff. Savannah, what do you got for us?
Well, speaking of Halloween and outfits, one of the things that I definitely wanted to try was like a little light bondage outfit. It's just like a little dress. Obviously, I'm not going to put it on because it's very
That is
revealing.
cute.
It's got like little slits and studs on the side. I think this is a good beginner thing to try out, because if you're just trying, it's hard to be like, oh, I'm going to be dominant, especially like if, I don't know, in like het relationships, typically the female is expected to be more dominant. That's just like how things typically shake out. And I think to get in the headspace, for example, like when I go to work, I have like a specific playlist that I listen to. I call it my bad bitch playlist. And it just gets me into like my icy dom, like badass stripper mode, where I'm like, fuck man, give me money, basically. And like this dress kind of makes me feel the same way.
Oh, nice.
Can I jump in with you, Savannah, for a moment? On the beginner level, because I don't know that all beginners will just want to throw that on, but considering that it's Halloween, right, and considering what you just said, Kim, in terms of being a beginner, Halloween is this day of permission to wear outfits like that and be the beginner, play with that beginner dynamic in a really permissive way, because Halloween is like, hey, like this is the day that we dress up anyway. So
yeah, right.
it's, wear that dress on Halloween as your entry into beginning to play, maybe.
Yeah. No, I like that idea. I could do that.
Great. Savannah's like, I'm going to wear this every day. It's a beginner dress. And Kim's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'll wear it for Halloween.
I'm also a stripper, so I might be a little skewed in my fashion choices.
That's why I jumped in.
I love it.
Okay, so next beginner thing that I feel like is definitely a beginner thing is this bondage kit. It has it's 4 ropes, tie downs. So instead of handcuffs, which I feel like can be kind of like harsh on the skin, I've tried a lot of them. I've never found any that I really enjoy.
And
These are
definitely you can't break through handcuffs either.
true. These are more versatile. I think.
Dr. Jenny says, maybe you can. You
The
can
fuzzy ones you can break through. Trust me.
yeah, little ones, yeah.
These are more versatile. There's 4 straps. They're pretty long. You can tie them to each other. There's like hands and feet. Your hands don't have to be together. They can be separated. You can tie it to the bed. There's just it's just way more versatile. There's more poses. And what is that word? It's not like the rope tie up stuff. It's like kabari. Yeah.
What is
It's
it?
called harsh on the skin. Where
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
a sensation of softness that's not abrasive. Yeah.
Yeah. This is like very velvety lined. And it also comes with this little mask. Just super soft. It's very cute. Very super soft on the eyes. And you cannot see. So it's effective.
Okay. I would be willing. I would be willing to try that.
Yeah, it's soft. It's fun. There's a lot you can do with it. I don't know. And
Can you show us the package? What is that called?
It's a sports sheets beginner bondage fantasy kit.
Okay. Check.
And it's a lot. It's like, I feel like bondage kits, if it's your first time stepping into this kind of thing, it can be lighthearted and fun. Like I remember, I don't know, just like the act of my boyfriend tying me up sometimes. It's like, haha, like, what are you doing? Oh no.
You play that role. Yeah, well, so far I like that, and I like the leather outfit.
Yeah. Oh, also the thing I wanted to mention about this outfit is Adam and Eve is really great about offering extended sizes. So there is literally a size in outfit and dress for anyone, which I definitely really appreciate about that because I am a lingerie connoisseur and I cannot say the same for a lot of companies.
Yeah.
Love it.
Savannah, can I jump in again on that bondage kit? For super beginners again, it might be worth doing tying up or blindfold, and maybe not both at the same time, because that can be an overload to the system, to your nervous system for very beginners, right? Because if you take away one of your senses, like sight, it accentuates your other senses, right?
Yeah.
So even just taking away sight can be its own, play. It's sensory play, right? Another way to think about kink is sensory play, right? So you can play with smell, and you said whipped cream at one point, Kim, right? Like that's definitely sensory and taste. But I find for beginners to do tie up and take away the sensation of sight, can feel like an overload. So I would say go slow with your patience on that.
Yeah, I can't even handle being blindfolded and tied up at the same time. So I'm glad you jumped in and said that because I wouldn't have thought to say that, but I can't even, given my past and stuff, it's hard for me to give up that much control at once.
I feel much better now.
Yeah, no. All of it is in baby steps. Yeah. And there's no pressure to be
by the way.
Huh?
I think bondage is more medium play, by the way.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I don't know what I would consider beginner in that case.
I think feathers, like sensory play, like feathers on the body, ice cubes, maybe a warm, like it's something warm, even like a warm, things that you wear for your body to warm up muscles, just playing with temperature and lighter sensations, even like scratching. Right, can be all those lighter sensations. I kind of put into the light play box.
Okay, I actually last Valentine's Day, I kind of introduced my boyfriend into that kind of thing. His love language is physical touch, And I'm not like a very cuddly person. So for Valentine's Day, I like got these like silk straps. I tied him up. I got like a massage wax candle. I like got ice cubes. I got like these different chocolates and candies and stuff. So I had him blindfolded and I was like feeding him and I would have ice and then like the hot
Oh, I
wax.
love that idea.
Yeah. And like my nails, he loves my nails.
I
And
did
that,
something. I did. Go ahead. I don't want to
and
interrupt.
yeah, he loved it. I mean, that was definitely a good beginner thing for him. And it was
I
fun
do.
for me too.
I do remember, I mean, so we've been married 19 years, so I have to go back a little ways. But I do remember one time opening the door to George when he came home, and I was completely naked, and I had created this little bedroom in our living room by the fireplace, and it had all these little fun things. I totally forgot that I did that, and it was
It's so
so
fun.
fun. And we did
Yeah.
kind of the same thing, little chocolates and little sensory things.
Mhm.
You're right, Dr. Jenny. I'm a little
Yeah,
more kinky than I thought.
your light pink part, there it is, right?
There it is.
Setting to bring in that language. Yep, yep.
I totally forgot about that. Oh my
Yeah.
god, I'm so horrible. I need to really up my game for sure.
It
All right,
was fun to
what else
just
do
like
we have?
be in service to him. Speaking of being in service to him, I personally think this is kind of kinky, and I guess I don't know what good beginner versus intermediate is, but it is a like male masturbator toy that has a vibrator in it.
It's a what?
So it's just like it's a male masturbator toy. It's like a male solo toy.
Oh,
And it's got a vibrator in it, so it like kind of like cups his balls while it like I don't know. It's
Like
like
a flashlight without the
basically. Exactly. And so I think this is good for couples play. I personally like watching him pleasure himself. And this is not like BDSM-y, but it is outside of what I think would be vanilla couples play. So maybe that is more
interesting. Well, even my
Um,
husband says, "How come I don't have as many toys as you have?" Like, well, maybe we need to change that up.
Yeah, exactly. I gotta amp up his toy box too.
Yeah, no kidding. I actually need new toys.
These next two are definitely advanced. One is this lace collar and leash set.
Huh.
Personally, not my thing. I am not into that kind of role playing, but I did, from just a product standpoint, enjoy the feeling of this, how soft it was. It doesn't like chafe you. It's just comfortable to wear. As far as like a manufacturer standpoint, the chain is like it does not feel cheap. It feels like really, it's like heavy, so it feels kind of serious and like luxurious in my opinion, and it's like definitely strong. So even if you're not like being held down or like being walked around, for example, just like having the leash attached to the collar, just like the heaviness, I think kind of like does enough.
That still make a great Halloween costume.
Mm-hmm.
I could see myself putting that on George and walking around in the little dominatrix outfit.
Mm-hmm. He could just wear pants and a
Yeah.
collar.
Yeah, why not? I mean, we wouldn't go trick-or-treating with the grandkids like that, but hey, it could be fun around the house.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah, so that's a fun, more advanced one, I think. And then the most advanced one that I have are these clit and nipple suction twisters. They're not clamps. Personally, I have a sensory thing about metal on my body. Like I hate it, and I can't. Something about the feeling of metal on my body just like really is upsetting.
I just have super sensitive nipples. I don't think I could go there.
Yeah. I guess also this is like a little bit less
Okay,
intimidating.
so somebody explain to me what is the deal with that, with nipple clamps? I mean, why is that? Is that the painful part of this type of sex, Dr. Jenny? I mean, is that where that comes from?
Nipple clamps tend to be a higher sensation that people can call painful. A lot of people who like it sort of accentuates arousal. So it's those who like them don't necessarily go, oh, this is painful in an uncomfortable way. It's more of a sensation of it's a magnifying sensation, if you will. It is a better description than a painful sensation. And the magnification also magnifies arousal. So some people will put it on as they're building arousal, and some people put it on right at the edge of orgasm. It's the same way some people like to be slapped on the butt right at the edge of orgasm, because it sort of accentuates the intensity of the orgasm. So, butt play, right? Smacking and spanking play is another type of BDSM play. And usually right at that edge is where it's integrated in really well. And they have classes, by the way. You could go to dungeons and there's like 101s on how to spank and 101s on how to whip. And you can take these to kind of integrate it into your sex play if you want to. But there is sort of a timing to it and a style to it that is accentuating arousal and or orgasm. So that's the thing behind nipple play. I mean, while we're talking about toys with this, I'll just another plug, a lighter nipple play option, right? So this breathless. Do you guys know this one from Adam and Eve too? The breathless satisfier one. Gosh, my lighting is there. It is, right? It's their most toy that they made, and it's not designed for nipples, but because it's designed for oral sex, so it suctions, right, the clitoris.
Oh.
So I tell people who want to play light with nipple play, do this on your nipple, because the clamp might be too much or the metal might be too much, but this is kind of a cool sensation to play with the nipple.
Wow.
Just to be creative with your vibrators.
Yeah. This is kind of similar. The suction is just more manual, so you can it kind of looks like a science experiment. I don't even know quite what this looks like, but you kind of twist it up and twist it down. It doesn't hurt. Like it doesn't, I'm not like pain is not my thing. So I enjoyed this. It wasn't painful, but it definitely I think just like the blood flowing more to that area made everything more sensitive and nice.
So how does it, show me how that works again. It almost looks like a wine opener.
Kind of. Okay, so pretend that there's a nipple here. There's not. But so you put it here and basically twist it, and the suction from the vacuum on your skin will suck it up. I also use this on my clit, which felt pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. It's a little bit tricky because they're kind of thick, so getting the suction there is good, but it's not bad. That's the first time I've ever played with something like that.
Well, this has been a very enlightening conversation, to be sure. And I think we might be able to continue a little bit more on this when we talk next episode about unconventional sex. And again, I'm going to be completely, I have no idea. So I'm learning so much. Thank you both. And by the way, we'll put links on all of this stuff on our website, modernpleasurepodcast.com or modernpleasure.com. It's one of those. You can find it if you can find it. And you can get all of these items at adamandeve.com. Don't forget, use code word modern and you get 50% off of one item, almost any one item, and plus 10 free gifts, which are really fantastic. Free shipping, all of that. And just for listening to Modern Pleasure Podcast. See, this is the fun part. Thanks again, you guys, for being here. As usual, I always learn something new about myself. And I'm going to go, see what I can do about this. I think it'll be a fun experiment. I would like to say that we are really, really thrilled with the people that have been listening and downloading our podcast. We just hit 500 downloads, and I'm really excited about that. So keep listening, keep downloading, keep sharing, keep subscribing and following, and hopefully you're learning as much as I am on this show. Savannah, what about you? What are you learning? Some fun things?
Definitely. I'm also excited to be able to share, and I think just normalize vulnerability around these topics is super important for all age groups.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I feel the same way. It's been very enlightening, to say the least. So next episode is going to be a lot of fun too. So make sure you join us. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next time. Please help us grow this channel by subscribing and liking this video. I also encourage you to tap on that bell icon to receive notifications so that you won't have to miss any of our videos.
And also let us know what you think of this episode down in the comments below. What sex questions do you have, and what would you want us to discuss in our next episode?
Thanks for watching today's episode. And if you want to watch more videos, just tap or click on this video.